Welcome to Pomodoro Joe for Friday, March 3rd, 2023. Today we're doing LeetCode problem 28. Find the index of the first occurrence in a string. Given two strings, needle and haystack, return the index of the first occurrence of needle in haystack, or -1 if needle is not part of haystack. And this is a medium problem. All right, so I'll show you how to break this down into smaller problems to solve this. And then at the very end, if you stick around, I will show you how to solve this with one line of code. Okay, so we'll put 25 minutes on the Pomodoro timer and get started. So the first thing we'll do is we'll have a result, and we'll set it to -1 because that will be our default if we don't find needle in haystack. And at the end, we'll return our result. For this one, we need to go through and find where the first occurrence of needle is in haystack. So for this, I think I'll just go through for every character in haystack. Let's choose that as a potential start for needle. And then we'll check to see if it is the start of needle. Is this the one? Is this the answer? And if it is, we'll return it. If not, then we'll keep searching. Okay, so let's do that. So for some index in range, length of haystack. So for every index in the length of haystack, we can say if haystack at that index is equal to needle at 0. So if haystack at index I is equal to the first character in needle, then this could be the start of needle. So let's check. Let's just create a function. Here's a placeholder. We'll call it isNeedle, and we'll pass in I. All right, so if it is needle, then we can return I. Otherwise, we'll keep going, and at the very end, we'll return result. That's kind of it. Okay, so now we need to define this isNeedle. So let's define a helper function here. All right, so our helper function isNeedle will take the starting index, and we'll just compare every character from the starting index in haystack to our character in needle. If we find a match, we can return true. If we find a character that doesn't match, we will return false. Okay, so for every index in range of length needle, we will compare our two characters. So we need to do I plus j for the haystack index. All right, so our isNeedle will just take every index in length of needle, compare the needle's character to the haystack character, and for haystack we need to add I as the base, so that's the starting point, plus our j. If they ever don't match, we'll return false. If we get to the end, then we can return true. All right. That's pretty much it. Let's see if this works. All right, so this works. Let's see if we can pass. Oh, but we get an index out of range because one thing we're not checking is if we have enough characters left in haystack to contain needle. So there are a couple different ways we can solve this problem. One, we can check every index here, or we can actually just not check any character after a certain point in haystack if we know there aren't enough characters left. So what point will that be? That's going to be the length of needle, but it's a little bit tricky. It's not going to be the length of needle exactly. It's going to be the length of needle plus 1. So what I like to do in cases like this is to think about the very simplest case I can think of. So let's say needle is length 1. So if we have haystack, we subtract length 1, that means 1 character from haystack. But that last character could actually be needle. So we need to say the entire length of haystack is valid. So we go length of needle plus 1. Yeah, I know that doesn't make a lot of sense. Here, just try it. All right, we'll submit that. All right, and we do pass. We only beat 47% for runtime and 11% for memory. So we don't have a great algorithm here. Why didn't I get my cool little medal? Anyway, so we do pass. Let's see if we can make some improvements on this. So one thing, we have this function. Making function calls can actually be slow. So let's see if we can just replace this function call with this. So this is going to be a little bit tricky because, let's see here. Because now if we don't have a match, we have to break out of this loop. So one thing we can actually do here is say, we'll just assume we have a match. So let's say done is equal to true. We found our match, or is match. Here we go, let's do that. So we can replace this whole function. And we'll say, let's assume that needle's true. But if we ever get to the point where they don't have a matching character, we set is needle equal to false. And then this return I only happens if, after we go through this whole thing, if is needle, then we can return I. Okay, let's try this. Seems to work. Okay, it works. We save a ton on memory, but in terms of runtime, our runtime actually gets worse. We're at only 18%. Okay, so what else can we do? Well, there's a couple things we can do here. First thing I'm going to do is super simple. Let's just remove this result. We already know we can just return -1 down here. We don't need a separate variable for this. What else can we do? Well, as soon as we get false, we can break. So we can just break out of this loop here. That's another thing we can do. Let's try that. All right, making some improvements. 66% for runtime, not too bad. Okay, what else can we do? Sometimes, not all the time, sometimes this will help. Instead of saying, if we have a matching start character, let's say if we don't have a matching start, we'll just continue. Right, this whole thing needs to be in here. All right, so now we have this continue instead. Okay, so we've changed this conditional. Now let's see if that saves us anything. 94% and 95% for memory. Whoa, that is a huge win. So now we're beating 94% for runtime and 95% for memory. And the only thing we changed was our conditional. So we went from saying, if the character in haystack matches the character in needle, do this work, to if they don't match, just continue. All right, that is a huge win. All right, one more thing I just want to try. So we're calculating this length of needle multiple times. So instead of calculating it over and over and over again, let's just keep it in a variable for us here. Now, I'm actually not convinced this is going to save us enough. In fact, this might slow us down. Certainly should take up more memory. All right, so let's try this, see if this makes any difference. 97%. So let's see, we went from a 94% to a 97.85%. Of course, we jumped up in our memory from a 95% to an 11%. So we do much worse in our memory here. But we got a 97% for runtime. I'm pretty pleased with that. Okay, one last thing I promised. Thank you for suffering through all the missteps along the way, but here is your one-line solution. Return haystack dot find needle. So Python has some amazing string handling libraries. This is all you really need to do. And it works. Let's see if it performs any better than our own function. It does all right. It's 90% for runtime and 11% for memory. Yeah, 90% for runtime and 11% for memory, not too bad. We still do better with our own algorithm, 94 and 97. So I'll stick with our own functions. All right, folks, that's it for me. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope you had fun. Hope you learned something. Again, this was LeetCode 28. Try this one on your own. You can do it in one line of code. You can do it in many lines of code. See if you can get 100%. All right, that's it for me. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope you had fun. Hope you learned something. Hope you can go out and write better code.